Okay, you guys ready? Okay, welcome everybody to City of Sunbury Park and Rec Committee meeting for July 5th, 2023. It's about 5:30 p.m. How about roll call, Amber?
Mr. Ghost,
Here.
Mr. Martin,
Here.
Mr. Grumney.
Here.
3 present.
Minutes for approval. Our last meeting was on June 7th last month.
I'd like to make a motion to approve those minutes.
Motion by Mr. Martin,
I'll second.
second by Mr. Grumney. Discussion. Roll call.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
3 yeas, minutes passed.
Okay, visitor section. I don't see anyone out there at the moment. I did invite Silas Bowers, who's over at Orange Township, to stop by. He said he might be by a little bit later, so we'll see. Let's go to unfinished business. Obviously, we got J.R. Smith Park here on the agenda, talking about some more strategic planning. So since our last meeting, I had an interim touch base meeting. Daryl was with us and Dan and Mr. Washington with CT. And we went over a few changes that he made. You guys may be able to see the conceptual plans, the 3 colored plans here. And the idea was to remove the amphitheater like we had talked about and separate give more space with the playground, between the playground and the pavilion and the splash pad, and diagram in the entryways and add these swings and some entry arbors. And so that's basically what Richard did. The very first redo there is just a very basic entryway. You'll see a sidewalk to the right. It goes down to the pad and then the playground. And then the middle plan, he does more of a perimeter sidewalk all the way around both the pad and the pavilion. And the playground is attached directly to that perimeter sidewalk.
I have a question.
Yeah.
On 1 and 3, the areas around the shelter house are white, and on number 2, it's gray. Is there significance to that? I wondered if related to what material might be a possibility, or I don't know, but I just wondered if there was any significance to the gray versus the white.
No, I believe it was just a
Okay,
thing.
I really like that sidewalk going all the way around that area a lot.
Yeah, that's the big difference there. And the major difference, so you got a beefier entryway too, of course, with paver walkway and stone paver with the tree cut out and a sitting wall there. On the third plan, the idea was to have the beefiest, the most robust entry plaza, and you walk directly in front of the flag and you are into this area right in front of the pavilion. So your pavilion is basically your first item of sight, and the sight line there as you come into the park, instead of featuring the splash pad on the other 2. You'll notice the splash pad is there at the top as you come in on the first 2 redesigns.
I personally, I agree with what Dave's saying with the sidewalks and going around like that. The one thing though, I like the splash pad off to the side and not the first thing you see when you come in, because it's going to be multiple use. When you first come in, you're just going to see a bunch of splashing and that sort of thing. So I'm wondering, is there a way to incorporate some of the path work from 2, but with the design of 3? So see, in 3, the sidewalk hugs the blacktop
Yes.
carway. Is there a way to bring that in, like in 2, to still, even though splash pad's off the right, but bring it in and make it more of I don't know if I'm making sense, but make the sidewalk in 2 a little more circular in 3 by having a splash pad off to the
I
right.
think you make a lot of sense.
Okay.
I really agree with what you're saying.
Okay,
Yeah, I like that idea. You bring the sidewalk in off the pavement,
yeah,
I don't know, maybe 3 to 6 feet. And that actually gives you a landscape area too, to transition between the pavement and the sidewalk. And yeah, you could bring this sidewalk here, have a piece cut out here, I suppose, right?
Mhm.
yeah,
And over here to the playground. The only thing that does is it takes away that green, you have a sidewalk right in the middle of that nice green space.
which if you have green on either side of the sidewalk, that might be I don't know. Nice look, but
I do like the idea of a connection though, down here on this
Yeah.
left side.
And you, what you're calling that nice green space, you're referring to the pet waste station?
I think, I think you like this whole area right here.
This whole
Right,
area,
and that says pet waste
Yeah,
station.
right,
yeah.
yeah, yeah,
So it might not be such a nice green space after a while.
or maybe extra green.
Might be extra, yeah.
You know, we could pull the playground up a little bit and then pull this pavilion up a little bit closer. And then bring a sidewalk more in here.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah,
And that way, on 3, people aren't cutting through the pavilion every time to get to the other 2, the playground and the splash pad. So if you have people sitting in the pavilion, you probably don't want a stream of people constantly walking by
That's a good point.
to
Yeah.
get to those things.
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah.
Dan, any thoughts on those comments?
I think those are great. I can have Rich make those changes. I agree, I'll have to pull up playground in just a little.
You guys like the entry arbors?
Mhm.
Each arbor there on the third plan on the right.
Mhm.
It's a nice feature as you're walking in.
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Okay, let's, I think we're all in agreement of that. We like the pavilion there in the front and somehow incorporate a sidewalk there on the left connecting to the playground, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
Daryl, I don't know if this is a question for you, but Tim and I were talking a little bit about the 2 buildings that are on the west side of the park or whatever, or the left. Are we gonna do anything with those anytime in the near future as far as, because, I mean, I know there's still boards up or where the windows were broken, that sort of thing. Do you know of any plans to, or if not, Tim had a good idea about maybe putting some beautification landscaping to block, because I went to the park actually, I don't know, sometime this week with my wife, just to kind of look at how it would look laid out. And you see those 2 buildings, it just takes away from the visual beauty of it, I guess, because they look kind of out of place. So I didn't know what the long-term plans for those buildings were, or,
There are definitely long-term plans to make it more usable.
yeah,
Steve had put together, I think, a list of improvements that we briefly talked to the
Yeah.
committee about, whatever, a few months ago. But we really haven't made any progress on making that happen. So let me talk to the service team and see if we can't, if nothing else, get over there, clean it up a little bit more, and then maybe identify opportunities to maybe even get a little landscaping there.
yeah,
I think the long-term plan is to fix them up, to make them,
usable and.
usable, rentable
Mhm.
space in the
Right.
city.
And I think, Dan, if you could mention to Richard. So if we do end up separating the sidewalk a little bit, 3 to 6 feet or whatever between the pavement. If that leaves us a nice piece of soil there, maybe we can, add some landscape in between. Maybe some arborvitaes or something to help shield this, or some taller trees. Just until, once we get that redone, renovated, then we can open up and make a connection, I suppose. Take away some of the arborvitaes, the 2 or 3 arborvitaes, so we can get over there. Does that make sense?
Yes. Get it in my notes here.
Okay. So those were the only major redos, and then I had the opportunity to go over to the Gahanna. See, what did they call this? it was a site tour, of the Gahanna pad, splash pad over there. It's a 3,100 square foot pad, and Vortex, I gave you guys these handouts here. I got one extra one for you guys. They are the vendor who built it. It's 2 years old. It was on June 16th, Friday morning. The cost of that was roughly $600,000. And, but that included the recirculating system, which is sort of what we had talked about doing. But I found out from them that if you do a free flow system, it's roughly half the cost. And you can put in a 3,000 square foot free flow system for about 350,000 instead of 600,000. So I asked Richard, do you know if he did any kind of cost analysis in terms of water usage yet, Dan?
He's been out on vacation, so
Okay.
I'm pretty sure he hasn't.
So that's another thing we'll need to get from him next meeting is, what's the cost of use of the water from Delco if we put in a free flow system? And,
Want a comparison of the two?
yes. You got to keep in mind, these systems are only going to run
Mhm.
5 months out of the year, maybe.
Right.
They're only going to run when people are there.
Mhm.
And when they're all hand activated or motion activated, you put your hand over a motion activator,
Mhm.
and then it kicks on for a cycle,
Okay.
a few minutes. And then they set these things up so it runs at a 70% efficiency, the pump.
Okay.
So it'll pump out one side of the pad at 100%, but the other side will be maybe 50% at one time,
Okay.
instead of all the
100%.
amenities
Yeah,
blowing at 100%.
that makes sense.
Okay, it changes off, it rotates. So you can save water and cost there. And you locate the equipment based on age group. You want to keep certain kids in certain areas. It's a 4 to 15 minute sequence. Let's see, I had lots of notes here. One way to save money right up front, you can put these orange spray caps on for phasing in further amenities later. So you go ahead and dig underneath all your lines for now and in the future, and you cap off the one line. Like you see these caps out here.
Mhm.
You put a cap on the line you're not going to have an amenity attached to now.
Mhm.
You save that for later.
Sure.
Okay. So there were a few of those. Most pads use
How do the
concrete.
caps work? Are you creating trip hazards or are they flush with the floor of the thing?
They're flush.
Okay.
I got some pictures here. I don't know if Amber's able to bring them up or not. But there's a little hump, maybe a 2 or 3 inch rounded hump. They're plastic. There's the pictures. I don't know if you can see them in any of these. But you can also cap them to not run at all. You can turn them off entirely, or you can have them do a little, what's the word?
Spray or.
Spray up.
Yeah.
Fountain
Fountain.
type, single fountain,
Okay.
at 30% efficiency or something.
Mhm.
Let's see what else. This is a concrete pad. That one there is a concrete pad, the Gahanna pad. It's 2% slope. It's a lot less costly than the safety surface. And most pads are going with the concrete now. It took 2 months to build it. With the pad and the concrete surrounding, it's about 4,000 square feet. And again, that's a recirculating system. 16 by 16 pump house is needed. And you got to have your certified pool operator, which we've talked about, and they got to look at that and certify it every day. That $600K excluded the dirt work and the canopies. They're really nice canopies and benches. Does not include that. Okay. So that was very informative. Anything else you want to add, Dan or Daryl,
No, sir.
that you can think of?
I was just gonna ask this question. I mean, my recollection of the community meeting is that, and again, it may not have been the definitive word, but that people seem to be leaning toward the notion of the bubblers, as opposed to these amenities, or as opposed to those fixtures that throw water from above. It mostly came up, bubbled up from the
Yeah.
bottom. Do you think that is still an open question then?
Yes,
Because we're looking at the different types of features.
Yeah, that's absolutely, and that's kind of our next step. What are the exact, I mean, we gotta choose a vendor, and I guess it's gonna depend on what specific equipment that vendor can offer, right?
Well, and I think my recollection again of the public meeting is that, and maybe what Rich Washington had put together, is that actually the bubblers ended up being a more affordable option than a system that had, again, all of these overhead
Mhm.
sprays, if you will. So I guess I thought that's where we were headed. I thought we were headed toward a bubbler system, as opposed to, again, some additional fixtures. But maybe you still think that question is open. What do you think, John?
Well, I had the same impression that Daryl has, which is it was more coming from the ground, kind of that spurt stuff, or versus, like I don't know, fake palm tree that rains down, whatever.
The bottom right-hand picture on page 5
Here we go, look at the picture.
looks like that.
Okay,
Yeah, something like that, where, I mean, I show water coming in the background, I think from the top, but yeah, I'm thinking where the kids stand on it and then they get off of it and it sprays up out.
or the next page, I mean, the next page you have down there in the corner.
Yeah, those
Left-hand
kind of,
corner.
that feature with the water coming out, that's what they have, I think, like at Easton, I think, they have the water squirting up out of the ground, kids have a ball in that.
Rethinking portable fountains. Okay, with lighting, right?
Well, yeah, I don't know what the cost is for the lightning, I was hoping not, the lighting, but yeah, that was my, yeah, that's all, that's not, lightning's free of charge, but yeah, my concept, like, not something like this where it's coming down from above or what have you, but more the ground up where kids just run around and step on it and it comes higher in one area than the other when you step on it, and,
But do you want any kind of play toys at all?
It probably depends on cost, but I mean, it's aesthetically looking, looks good. Like that one in Easton doesn't have, I don't think, anything other than just the fountains coming up in the ground. And I mean, there's kids there in their shorts and stuff for long periods of time, just running and screaming and splashing and stuff. So, just a thought at the top of my head with no real. But if you start adding more features, you might get a group of older kids that maybe, like, if you keep it just to come out of the ground, you're gonna stick to the younger crowd, which I think is probably, in my opinion, what a splash pad's for, someone around the age of 1.5 to say like 5 versus, buckets falling down or, those types of things. It just seems more little kid friendly, which is probably the target we're shooting for. But that's my opinion. And I know a lot of it comes down to cost, right? So, I mean, the more features you add, obviously,
Right.
the cost is gonna.
And although we do have the budget or the probable cost, depending on the project cost. It does have in there $350,000 for the splash pad. Again, that's the flow through system, which again,
Yes.
that question is clearly still open.
Mhm.
I remember that when we were looking at it at the community meeting, I think the bubbler was more in the $250,000 range. So maybe it's worth figuring out what Rich is he still kind of on the bubbler concept with the
As far as I know.
the flow through? Yeah.
That's the way I understood it from what we talked about in the past.
Okay.
I'm
So,
gonna-
I mean, we can start there. I guess the point is that it doesn't preclude maybe us moving in the direction of adding some of these elements, but if we're gonna start with cost model.
Yeah, I'm taking some notes. I'm gonna send Richard an email. I'll copy you guys in and we'll ask him those questions. What's the 350 for? What's that include? What kind of splash pad amenities, if any? And I honestly would like to see a few amenities myself. You know, maybe one side we've got bubblers and or maybe 70% bubblers and 30% we have a few things you can play around with.
I like the idea of a plastic sliding board with water running down it. I think that sounds like fun.
All right.
Going to the concrete.
It's just.
But Daryl, it's a good segue into the cost. Yes, this new cost sheet has now been redone based on a lower cost for the pad, a flow through system instead of the recirculating. That allows, see, we're still under 2 point, you know, we're at 2.3, basically where we were before, but we've added some really, really nice beefy, robust entryway to the plaza, with a nice entryway. We've got arbors and swings. So the look and feel is a lot nicer now.
Mhm.
Okay.
Yeah, and as I've mentioned to the chairman, I think once we can kind of get ourselves comfortable with the, you know, with the amenities and Tim or Richard can do the cost estimate, you know, I think we can then seriously begin to figure out, okay, how are we going to fund this? And again, is it a phased model? What does that phasing look like? What does that phasing look like? I mean, we'll obviously need to do the engineering piece of it. You know, and, you know, so we can figure out actually what we can phase in. We did include in the packet, in addition to the, yeah,
Got
just
your
a couple of other amenities that are priced into here, the picnic pavilion, restroom, shelter space, and the entryway system. So as you said, Tim, you know, those are still, we're trying to get a better handle on what those would cost,
Yes.
you know, if they were built in that kind of a style.
Yes, we did talk about that. And you see the J.R. Smith archway signs. You know, it's steel. We're talking about steel beams. It's very nice.
Mhm.
Do you like that font
Yeah.
for J.R. Smith Park?
It looks nice.
It's classic. Like looks like Times New Roman.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Okay, so we'll have another touch base meeting, I think probably in 10 to 12 days. In the meantime, I'll get an email out to Richard so he can work on some of these revisions we just talked about. And then the next meeting, we really got to determine, maybe Richard or Dan can come show us, or we can, in our next meeting, Rich can have some amenities and cost showing the fountains versus the, you know, a few other things. Okay. And then after that, Daryl or Dan, once we've narrowed that down and what we want the pavilion to look like, how will that work? Will we go out to bid? Dan, what will be the next process? I'm trying to get a feel on when we could go out to bid and maybe talk about funding
For the building, you mean?
for the pavilion, the pad and the playground.
Yes, we go out to bid for it. We can have a spec of building in the bid package. And have them provide that same building.
And then sample donation policy, that's part of our new business. Let's go there. This sort of along the same lines. Daryl, are you able to come up with some information?
Yeah, I was gonna say, do we want to though, we had mentioned in the notes, we would spend a little bit more time on the funding options that Dana had put together last time.
Oh, yeah.
Just maybe a few more minutes on that.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's see, where are those?
Packet page 11.
11?
Yes.
Okay. Can you speak to some of these, Dana?
Yes, I can. The number one option, I believe, would be the center. And I'm looking at the top table here with 3 separate grant or loan programs. The center option, which is capital projects, this would be I guess, the most desired of all of these because there's no match. I don't know how likely it is for Sunbury to receive one of these grants. Do you know if we've ever applied for one of these in the past from the state capital budget? I'm not aware.
I don't think so. from the
But in any
state.
case, the application is due in the fall of the odd year before the budget submittal. So this fall, we would apply for it from the 2024 capital budget from the state of Ohio. So that's something that I'm putting on my calendar to look into before that project deadline. And pretty much anything that we want to use at this park, playground, splash pad, shelter house, all of these amenities that we've been discussing would be in the allowed use of the capital budget. So that's something I would certainly want to look into. The number 2 option is that ODNR program for Land and Water Conservation Fund. There is a $500,000 maximum award for this, and there is a match. It's a 50-50 match / grant. And again, all of the allowed usages are for everything that we've been discussing for the J.R. Smith Park. You can even do in-kind donations to move towards that or to go toward the required match. So money isn't the only thing that can be used to match against what we receive from the state of Ohio.
Okay,
And again, that's something that the application is due in November, so this fall. So along the same timeline as the state capital budget, I'll look into that as well and see if we
Okay.
can get any of those monies. The Nature Works option on the far right, this is something we would have to wait to apply for until 2024. They have a June 1st deadline, so we've missed that one for this year. So we'd have to wait. And this is a 75-25. We received 75% of the funds, have to pay 25% on our own, and it's a reimbursable grant.
okay,
Can you only apply for one of these or could you apply for all 3?
All 3, as far as I'm aware.
Okay,
Yeah.
okay, awesome.
and then I see I don't want to get ahead of the game here, but your phased approach, for example, down below, we could use the
Yeah.
the capital project funding for the parking, entrance, restrooms, and maybe the splash pad.
Right, and these are all just my kind of a brain dump of ideas. I didn't have any lot of rhyme or reason as to what I put down here. I just wanted to put an example of what we could accomplish if we went to a phased approach. So of course, a lot of these amenities and phasing and funding sources can be moved around depending on how we want to move forward with the project. So just some ideas I wanted to brainstorm and put some ideas on paper.
Okay, I think we should decide possibly the next meeting, exactly how we want to proceed with that.
Yeah,
I mean, I think you're right on track. I think that's exactly what we need to do. There is one other grant possibly that we can pursue. It's through Preservation Parks.
okay.
I had a meeting with Matt Simpson. And someone else was on the line there. I can't remember. Was that you, Daryl, or Dan?
I was on line with him. Yeah.
Okay, and yeah, that's right. We talked about the path, seeking some funding through Pres Parks and their grant to connect the Ohio to Erie Trail to our park. So, and we talked about putting it here behind Sure Signs. They seem to believe that Scott Fodor, who owns Sure Signs, would be amenable to that. And Mr. Mayor was going to have a conversation with him about that. So we would be planning on seeking that grant too. That's not, the cost of that attachment for that trail is not in this budget currently. So that would be extra. But again, I think Pres Parks, we connect the Ottery Trail. We showed him this plan. Mr. Simpson was pretty excited about it. So that's a possibility too. Okay.
All right.
I did actually. Did you get those pictures I sent?
Yeah.
Of that quote or the video? Did you get the video too?
I don't think I got the video. I have to-
Kate Belcher. So I was up near the lake near Huron this weekend, and there is a basketball court. There it is, and a pickleball court. And I'll show you guys the video here that I took. Apparently that didn't go through, but this is what it looks like. This is one court, and there's asphalt underneath, and on top there's this 1 or 1.5 inch layer of very hard plastic 8x8 like this that are interlocked
Okay.
that sits on top of the asphalt, and that's what's painted.
Hmm.
And there's pickleball court and the basketball court. It's all painted. Both courts are painted right on that court. And it is removable. You can just take those 8x8 plastic sections and remove it all if you want to.
What's the base under the plastic?
There's asphalt.
Okay.
In the video I took, I'll show that to you. I went to the edge and pulled it up. You can see what it looks like. But the ball bounces really well. And you can see the fencing. There is there's a 6 foot high fence on the side. I think it was 8 foot on the ends behind the basketball court, the basketball goals. And then they had the fence pole posts on each side. Maybe you can see that in one of those pictures. On each side of the court, there's a fence post, a 3 foot fence post for the fencing, for the netting, for the pickleball court.
Mm.
So anybody can play basketball and anybody can play pickleball at any point in time.
Yeah. That's nice.
All right. Anything else on J.R. Smith? Okay, let's go to the Reservoir Park planning. Do we have something happening there, Dan or Daryl?
Really, the only update I've got is the
only update I've got is that we have worked out everything with ODNR as far as the dams and reservoir safety issues go, and are proceeding with a water drawdown plan, which meets their criteria as well as some other things. And at the same time, we'll work in design of the park itself and create them as one single plan, different funding sources, I presume, but create them as one plan for efficiency and to get them done in time to meet the grant requirements. Extension.
What is that? What is that?
End of the year.
End of this year?
Yes,
Okay.
it'll be close.
Do we have
But I
to?
think we just have to get started.
Break
We don't-
ground.
Yes, correct.
All right.
And it's a storm system that drains the reservoirs. We have to do that for the dams and reservoir program, but we also have to do it to free up some of the infrastructure that's in where the parking lot's going to go, because some of that will have to be removed. And that water currently runs through there in some fashion or another. So we'll have to remove all that. That has to be done in order to do the parking lot. And so that the phasing will be the dams and reservoir safety project first, then the park project second. But if it's all as one project, we've broken ground. So when it starts.
Let's put that on our agenda item.
Okay.
For our touch base here. Next meeting too.
A couple of weeks ago, when we had been for 12 or so days without rain, I went up and walked the lap at J.R. Smith Park. And when I was leaving the park, as I came up the hill and I was walking along on Cherry Street there was a storm sewer with water flowing like crazy through it. And my question is that coming from the reservoir? And if it is, can we tap it in some way to use in the splash pad?
I don't.
We literally hadn't had rain for 12 days and water was pouring under that street.
Yeah, I'm not sure. The second part of that question, I'm not too sure about, because you'd be using dirty water to.
Well, if it's coming out of the reservoir, it's not that dirty.
No, it's dirty enough.
It's not
treated.
It's not a storm. It's a storm sewer, not a sanitary sewer.
Right, but as you put all the stuff that gets in there from.
Yeah, but we can throw a filter or two in there.
see that you'd have to build a treatment plant in order to
Yeah.
put it there. So,
Was that coming from the reservoir, do you think?
I believe it is. Yeah, there's some drains in the bottom part of that. I didn't go into full detail. Part of what we have to do is we have those outlet structures because they are leaky and they have valves in them, which are probably either frozen open or frozen shut. The water does run through there relatively constantly. The other thing is that when we do this work, we're going to have to either drain the reservoirs.
That's right.
Or figure out how to do a coffer dam for a reasonable cost. And I don't think we want to drain the reservoirs because it'll take forever.
Oh, geez, yeah.
We'll be waiting for 10 years to fill that thing up. Probably not quite that much, but it'll take a long time. So that'll be part of the challenge moving forward with this.
That's what J.R. Smith, you mean,
No, it's
the reservoir plan.
the reservoir plan, yes.
Okay. Is there anything else we need to do? We're not thinking about for J.R. Smith with
Is
regard to the underground piping or something? I
We
thought
just-
there was an issue once we talked about.
there was some mention about some sort of
Yeah.
mystery underground reservoir
What was that?
piping, but we never found anything
Yeah.
related to that.
Well, I was gonna say, so probably two things. One is Mr. Bream, I think, had raised an issue about just how wet the park is. So, and whether or not there's some sort of an underground water source. And that's sort of one thing. But the other thing you keep in mind, there is a sanitary line that goes through the park. And I think we did talk about the fact that there's a little bit of a belly in that pipe. And so again, when we're in there doing the renovation here, we probably do need to do some sanitary improvements as well.
Okay.
Is that the lowest point of Sunbury down there where that park is?
Boy, I would think it's close, that's for sure. I don't know what would
We have
be
to look at the
lower.
topo.
You're probably right, Dave.
Well, wouldn't it really be Middleview? I mean, isn't it basically the sewer?
Well, yeah, over there
I
by
mean, at the
Big
end of the day,
Walnut
that's the,
Elementary.
I mean, this is gravity fed down through there, so
That's right.
suggests it's lower down there than it is at the park. So,
Yeah, it could be that
Yeah.
new piece of
I'm not
land.
so sure, but you might be right.
Could be that new piece of land we just bought.
could be,
That's right.
could be the low spot, but
Mr. Chairman, the other thing about that, as far as what's underground, when we get into this design process, we'll look into that sewer. We'll also do a geotechnical investigation. So we'll drill to make sure do borings to make sure there's nothing that we don't want to deal with underground there.
Okay. Shouldn't be any surprises, hopefully, other than sanitary and. I don't know.
anytime you go underground, there can be some.
Okay, let's go to the new business section, the sample donation policy.
All
Do you
right.
have something for us, Daryl?
Yes, so packet page 12.
Hmm.
I'm gonna call this the first draft.
Yeah.
Well, because it is first draft. All right, so let me just talk a little bit about this. It's called the donation policy. And the first thing I think I want you to know is it's not the fundraising plan. I mean, you still have to develop a plan about how you go out and get the funding.
Mhm.
But the donation policy basically tells you what kind of fund you're willing to accept and for what purposes. So it is useful and will be useful when we develop a fundraising plan, but it's not meant to be the fundraising plan. So what it does is a policy that sets the standards for what's acceptable. It also sets out the approval criteria for soliciting, considering, and accepting sponsorships or donations. The way that I've set this one up at the moment, and I feel like I still need to tweak this a little bit more, is that I've set it up where the Parks Committee is basically the level at which the discussions about the sponsorships occur. We could create a situation in which an appeal of the decision of the committee could be appealed to the council. Let's say you decide that maybe it doesn't fit the policy, it's not an acceptable source. And let's just say it's an alcohol, because that's one of the prohibited uses. Somebody who sells alcohol or principally sells alcohol, and you say, now that's your principal use, and they're trying to argue, well, no, we're really more than that. We're A, B, or C. We could create an appeal process in which it would go up to council. But the way that it's written now, it's basically written that it would low-level sponsorships would come through staff. Anything less than $2,500, anything more than $2,500 would come to the committee for your consent on.
Let's see, that's over here on page 13.
Yeah.
Okay.
What it does try to do is create an open, transparent process for making donations. So not only would it guide our decisions, not only staff and the committees, but it also let anyone who wants to be a potential sponsor understand what the limitations of those sponsorships might be, the types of sponsors that you're looking for. Like I said, it sets a $2,500 threshold for committee versus a staff consideration. It does identify prohibited sponsorships, like I said, for alcohol and tobacco products, for example, sexually oriented products. Those would be the types of things that you would not accept a donation or a sponsorship of any sort as it relates to the parks. And again, I'm trying to write this as if it's again a donation to the park system or a parks program or a parks facility. I mean, the city, maybe wants a broader donation policy, but this was not written that way.
Is there, without reading through the whole thing, is there anything that is a high enough donation that could give somebody naming rights to
Yes.
an amenity?
Yeah. And I think we would still have to spell out, at what level.
Right.
I mean,
yeah.
Are you willing to name a park after somebody for an amount? Are you willing to name a pavilion after somebody for an amount? Those thresholds haven't been identified here
Okay.
yet, but I mean, as we start to think through, your willingness to do that, we can do that.
Yeah.
And we can set this threshold higher. The $2,500 numbers, I mean, that may be way too low. You don't only want to know if somebody's trying to name an amenity after themselves or their company, maybe those are the ones you want to come to you.
Right.
Anything that's a donation to support, I'm just making this up, a disc golf league sponsorship to sponsor the program for the year. Maybe you want to know about it. But
Yeah, I'm talking about sizable
Yeah.
donation.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Exactly.
or contributions or,
Right.
yeah.
Daryl, could you clarify? I'm sorry, I'm just reading this and it's not clicking with me. So under the levels of sponsorship level 1, offers of sponsorship that are for terms of 2 years or more,
Mhm.
or project. So that's not tied to the 2,500 necessarily. That's just like, hey, we want to sponsor Sunbury Park for 5 years at $2,500 a year. That's so.
Yep.
So it's not tied. So if you get $2,500, you don't have whatever for 2 years or more. And that's kind of separated, correct? Is that what that's saying?
Well, I think I wrote it as it could be that are for terms of or are projected to generate 25. So
Okay.
it could be,
Yeah.
it could be
Okay.
either
Yeah.
scenario.
Either or, yeah.
Right, gotcha.
Coming to
Okay.
you. And again, that threshold may be way too low. You might want
Right.
something significantly higher than that. Maybe the other thing to think about here is, I mean,
Right.
the reason that maybe a longer term sponsorship might be the type of thing that you would want to come to this committee is because then it ties up something, whatever that something might be, for a couple of years. And,
Mhm.
maybe that's the pavilion at GRE Park, you wouldn't want that named, and I'm just making this up, right? You wouldn't want that named, Bob's Auto Shop Pavilion for 10 years. Right. I mean,
Depends on the donation.
it might, depends on the donation, right?
It could be bombs all.
Yeah.
Which brings up another point now.
Pulte's Pavilion there. How about that?
Mm-mm.
Pulte's Pavilion.
Mhm. Down here at the bottom, alcoholic beverages establishments, and so is that saying, let's say the tavern or Serve, for example, they're not a bar, they're a restaurant that serves alcohol, reputable restaurant.
Right.
With this language here, he's saying this prohibits a facility or an establishment
So-
like Serve from sponsoring at all?
So it says that primarily sell alcoholic beverages, including bars, provided that food service establishments or places or lodging that may be authorized as sponsors only when the sale of alcohol is incidental to providing food services.
So if the percentage of food sales are greater than the alcohol.
Yeah, you would say
No
that,
problem.
okay, that's a permitted, sponsor. We're willing to take them on.
Okay.
Or you may even, I don't know, maybe, anybody that sells, 75% of their sales are alcohol related or tobacco related, maybe those are out. Anything less than that, maybe you accept. So like I said, it's meant to be a first draft and to throw out some conditions or standards. And it also begins to identify or it identifies that there, what are the appropriate types of messages and formats that you'll take? Signage, printed materials, the naming of an asset, audio. So if you've got, a baseball league going on or something, the sponsor may get mentioned through kind of an audio process rather than a plaque on the wall or something like that. So there are different levels at which, and different formats in which you'll take a sponsorship. It also begins to identify sponsorships or facilities and services where sponsorships will not be permitted. For example, the Ohio to Erie Trail. I mean, that's not something that is the city's asset. It's in the city. We're not going to accept and cannot accept, a sponsorship related to that. And then at the end, I think what it says is that anybody who enters into a donation agreement or a sponsorship agreement, or makes a donation or wants to sponsor something, that we will put together an agreement on that just articulates the expectations of what it is they're getting, what it is they're paying, when the money comes, how long the naming right exists, that kind of thing. This doesn't have the agreement attached to it. I mean, we'd have to still develop an agreement, but anyway. So I mean, there's a lot in here.
So next steps, we should digest this, think about it, go over it, come back.
I think the big question here maybe for today, just if there's any reaction to what I've defined as kind of the committee's role, because that would alter how I revise the next version of this document. Do you think that this notion of approving sponsorships above some level should happen at the committee level? Or do you think, well, the committee is just a recommending board for the most part. Council's the authority that makes final decisions. Maybe it really needs to be the committee recommends and council approves.
Yeah, because we're not we're less than half of council. So
I think the committee recommending with council approval.
yes, I
Proper approach
would agree with that.
with I think a $5,000.
But maybe with a higher number.
The 5,000 level.
Okay. All right. So let me rework it with those thresholds.
Okay.
Okay.
And then if we have any other recommended changes in the next week or two, we'll let you know.
Yeah, if you have any additional thoughts, like I said, we'll go through it in more detail at the next.
And will our finance director weigh in on all of this and what's legal financially for the city to
But
do?
should all be
and
legal.
everything?
Yeah, financially and ethically, we'll want to make sure that is run by Mr. Bream as well. But yes.
Right, okay.
And you mentioned this is so this is a donation policy, and the fundraising plan would be totally separate and it would have to be developed.
Yeah, I mean, a donation or a fundraising plan might say, okay, we need to raise $300,000. And the way we're going to raise $300,000 is we're going to approach, the following types of whatever potential sponsors. And maybe we agree that plan is the chairman, will join us for a meeting of staff and the chairman to ask, and we need to put together some marketing materials or whatever. Make J.R. Smith Park's a good example of that. So that to me, that's the plan of how you go about raising the money. This again just says the types of things that you're willing to accept money for. And so it would also then be helpful as you're out there, as we are out there talking to potential sponsors about what the options might be. And it also kind of tells us who we shouldn't approach as well. So they work hand in hand, but this is the overarching policy.
Okay. All right. Go ahead, Dave.
No, I'm just nodding in agreement with what,
I
yeah.
thought you were chomping at the bit, but so that's definitely part of our funding for J.R. Smith Park. So next step for a fundraising plan, what should we do in terms of getting that together?
Well, I mean, it maybe if we can do at least one more turn on the policy first before we start to think about the fundraising plan, that I think would probably help.
Okay, very good. All right, very good. Thank you very much. Very helpful. The other item we have, other park updates, preservation parks. Was that regarding the meeting we had, Daryl?
Well, I just put that there. We certainly have the groundbreaking.
Oh, yeah.
You can talk a little bit about that, but also if you wanted to have your conversation, a little more update on that conversation with preservation parks.
Yeah, Matt Simpson did officially send out an invite. I think it was today, an email inviting myself and Daryl and anyone else who might be interested for ribbon cutting on Saturday, July 13th, I believe, at 10.
15th.
15th at 10 a.m. And I'm gonna be there. I sent a note to Mr. Mayor. He said he cannot be there. But I'll have some remarks to say to add to whatever Pres Parks is going to do. And whatever you, if y'all you have time to come on over, that'll be the time and the date.
I will be in Florida.
And I'll be a third of the way to Scottsdale, Arizona then.
Nice.
Now, you realize this is July 15th. You're going to Arizona and you're going to Florida.
Yeah, southern Florida.
What you guys doing?
That would be great.
Cooler weather.
Holy cow.
Okay.
It's beautiful this time of year.
The hotel has great air conditioning, so.
I believe it. One other thing,
Good point, though.
yeah, on Pres Parks. We want to make sure that Richard, maybe we need to put this on the agenda for our next touch base. And come up with a connector there that we talked about, Dan. And then getting a plan together to apply for that grant. And when is it? Let's work on that. Okay, I think that covers everything. Any other unfinished or new business, old business?
No, sir.
Got it in 5 minutes. Motion for adjournment?
Yes, motion to adjourn.
Okay, I'll second by Mr. Martin. Further discussion. Go ahead, Amber.
Mr. Grumney,
Yes.
Mr. Martin,
Yes.
Mr. Ghost.
Yes,
We are adjourned.
thank you.